Cal, how long do you think you can keep tricking the brain using things like the water bag or the overspeed? So did you do that and then the whole
Yeah.
summer?
Yep.
Because I mean, obviously, if it's a survival thing, the brain's so clever it can quite quickly adapt. But I'd be curious what you would think, how many exposures you could do until it sort of settled.
Yeah. And that's what I was thinking. Like, well, how long is this shit's gonna last, right? Because it can't be the whole summer. So basically, whenever you grab that thing, and because here's what I'm thinking. You walk around 10,000 steps of whatever your normal is, and then you throw in 5 strides each leg of a water bag run, the brain goes, oh shit, and it turns everything on, right? And it's like, okay, it turned everything on, it rewired itself to handle that. And but I kept checking it in that female, and she kept turning on and staying on. Now she'd be shut off the next day when I checked her. You know what I mean? But at least she was on during that workout. And did things get better? Yes. Things got better over time, but there was a ceiling she kept hitting that I just couldn't get her, on a normal walk in, everything's feeling okay. She was still at like a 15 to 10% deficit. You know what I mean? But she got better. But so yes, you're right. That was my question. But so which then turned into, so how do you use this information? So my athletes, they walk in, they'll take a massage gun, they hit they hit all their RPR spots, and they hit those sling spots to turn it on. They do a water bag run, which they pick it up and they run. And then I do a goat drill, which is kind of a brain activation, right? It's not an agility drill.
This is the infinity loop,
Yeah, the
Cal. You
infinity
told us
walk.
about
Yep.
before. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I have found now what I did then, Booker, was like I put the water bag in with the first rep of goat drill in my off season. So then it just takes two birds with one stone. And people are like, well, you tested on a straight ahead. I know, but I tested hundreds of athletes to make sure, and it was tough because by the end of summer, everybody seems to be on. In my program, I'm going, okay, I can't find people. So at the beginning of the summer, the next year, I was like, okay, a lot of people are off, do the goat drill with a water bag, first time, and maybe we can talk about that goat drill later. And people could search it. If we don't get into it, it's goat performance drill. Um, it literally turned everybody on. And so basically you can do a goat drill with a water bag and hit that with a massage gun or hit it with your thumbs, all those spots to turn those things on for those slings. And I saw you can see it instantly. Like it doesn't take a genius. Like my interns who don't really know a whole lot, Mike, you sent me a couple that are great, but a lot of them, they read in the books and um, you're sitting here going, I'm like, okay, they can do this. They saw what happens, they saw the changes, and then I see them test an athlete. I'm like, okay, great, this is awesome. So they get excited. So essentially, they walk in, they massage gun themselves, they do a go through the water bag run, and you're ready to go. I know there's teams and organizations that are doing it now before practices. Just this scenario because I told them I didn't tell them why with the ACL non-contact. But I said, hey, watch this. So I took some athletes. I said, hey, do a massage gun, do a water bag run, and then they just did a simple go drill or not. Brought them to the table, showed everybody, hey, this is how it turned on. Now, when people think turning on muscles, can I talk about that? If you guys, I think people need to hear this. Oh, the muscle turned on, so it's more activated. Right. But what if you watched an EMG and the muscle's actually less activated once you do the right thing? And people are like, well, you just activated. Yes, but it activated so much and was dysfunctional and it was turning on way more. Once I got the right patterns in place with the water bag run, the muscle didn't activate as much, but it's stronger. You see what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Mhm.
so activation doesn't mean the muscle's going to turn on more. It actually might turn on less, but it's in a coordinated fashion.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that, you know what I mean, guys?
It can relax then so that then it can be efficient in, sort of producing power, but then can come back to a steady state of relaxation. It's like stress levels, right? Like you don't want to be chronically stressed at 20%. You'd rather be at zero than when you want to go up to 100, you can go up and down. In this kind of way, do you mean?
Exactly. Booker, that's the secret to the best athletes in the world.
Yeah.
Right there.
The
You just
rate,
said
how relaxed they are. Yeah.
well, Mendeev figured it out in 1960s of the best athletes in the world. We're talking the Olympic champions, world record holders. What did they do different than people that made the Olympic team? We're talking Olympians still. But what separated them? And it was they couldn't find muscle speed. They couldn't find anything other than their ability to relax their muscles faster. Now that is a complex. It's to me, it's not that complex, but that ability you're talking about. So yeah, you activate a muscle. It might not turn on as much, but it also relaxes faster. And to me, when you see an athlete move, um, and there's that fluidness, you know what I'm talking about? Like if people went on my YouTube channel and looked up primetime Olympian, there's a 5'11", 185-pound female doing a primetime straight-legged run, and it looks like a ballerina. And she is traveling at such a high speed, and it almost looks effortless, right? Now she's a 6-time world champ, no, a 7-time world champ, 3-time Olympian, probably before maybe. Here it is. No, that's a. I have another one, Booker. Danny's pretty good, or I'm sorry, Michael, but Danny's pretty good. Uh, but she's short, and when if you can watch the other one, if you look it up, there'll be two athletes. Lisa, yeah, it says 6-time world champ. So the point is that fluid ballerina, but when she is slamming her foot on the ground, but it looks effortlessly. All the here, yeah, that's the one you're talking about. So if people want to look that up and play it in slow motion, that's pretty magical. And I could give a 2-hour demonstration on what's happening in her body there, but it is the fluidness. Now, people, oh, she's a 3-time Olympian. Of course she's going to be that. Yeah, but if I took video at the beginning of the summer, right? So as she's pushing the fluidity of a 180-pound female, probably I'm good friends with her. She'd kill me, probably just mention her weight, but you could see though she's athletic. She's in the best way a savage, to say the least, you know what I mean? But like um that fluidness, the magic in this is that the muscle can jump up, Booker, like you talked about, at 100%, maybe 80, I don't know, but then they shut off quickly. And then the magic is, so there's a lot going on with that relaxation. The other muscles involved can now contract fully. The antagonist, right? The muscle that's opposite of that, because if they're not relaxation and that muscle stays turned on, the other muscles around can't turn on fully. And then there's a lack of coordination with, let's say, not the antagonist, the muscle that works against it, but the muscles that worked with it. There's so much drag running through their body of muscle tone that it's never going to be that fluid. Does that make sense? So, in my eyes, Medvedev was correct that that is the magic. So, which is then the secret to everything I do for all my exercises is that you eventually see me get to a point where the exercises I choose, let's say I start out with a heavy shoulder press, that does nothing for relaxation. It gets my athlete strong, it gets the tissue stronger, it gets the bones more dense, but it doesn't do anything for relaxation. And then eventually you see me do an overhead banded delt where in 10 reps, or I'm sorry, in 10 seconds, they get 20, my good athletes can get 24 repetitions of turning the muscle on and off. Because I like those oscillatory things because it will actually force a relaxation. Because years ago I wrote about it with ASFM and triphasic 1 was that, hey, I'm trying to force muscles off. Because Sheraton's law says if my bicep contracts, my tricep has to relax. And then I just drew the line, or I just connected a dot between Medvedev saying the best athletes in the world relax faster. And the Sheraton's law, I went, well, hey, if I do these exercises with oscillatories, and I didn't invent oscillatories, like Mel Sisk wrote about them in super training. And if I can, so if I do a bench press and then I use my lats to pull the bar back down, it forces the delts to relax faster. So this is why I did the oscillatories, short range of motion, just ripping it back and forth. I'm teaching this person to be more fluid. And here's the day when I really started this was in early 2000s. I had some track athletes, and we had two kids that ended up running the world's fastest time 2 weeks apart in the 400. And I was just, actually, it was a dumbbell bench press. So I'm having the whole track team do this. And our three best kids, when they're doing these oscillatory dumbbell movements, they're doing them with 30 pounds because we were peaking. We actually had to hold them on the bench press because in like a 2-inch range of motion, they generated enough force to fly off the bench press. So we had to keep our hands on their chest, and they pull in 2 inches down, and they're just going oscillatories, and they'd be vibrating and jumping off the bench. Just the super elite kids. Now they're all elite, understand, but the three kids that I felt there's something fluid about them. There's just different. And I didn't know what the hell difference meant back then. I just could see it. I went, these oscillatories are good because if I have to hold them on the bench and these three can do it and everybody else I don't, I'm going, oh, this has got to be good because they're different when they do this. So I need everybody to get to that point. So you're sitting here going, that relaxation is what magic is, in my opinion. That's the magic. Because if everything else relaxes and then you're about to explode to do a powerful movement, there's less resistance within the body and you'll produce more power. Now, the other quality I see with power in my best athletes that I've ever coached in their sport, in their position, is that they have a huge power to kilogram ratio, right? So they produce more power and they weigh a little less, or they don't weigh less, but they just produce, right? There's two factors in being an elite athlete that I feel like you have to have. You know what I mean? And those are two considerations. So I'll take the person that has a greater power to kilo ratio than the other person because I can just do more. And usually it's an indicator that they relax their muscles faster.
If they're not naturally able to relax, Cal, I know two good things from you that helps people relax. That good Chinese shit or the mammalian reflex that you
Yeah.
get.
Well, and when I said it was dynamic, as you mentioned, it's if they can't, the other quality in the elite athletes is you can't just look local at the muscle relaxing. The central nervous system, if you can't control your parasympathetic and sympathetic systems, like if you take a bunch of pre-workout and you're all tuned up, right? You're not going to teach your muscles to relax very well. No, don't get me wrong. I have my best athletes in the world. They'll do a pre-workout, they'll do coffee, whatever they want, and they can still relax everything. I'm not saying they have control of their. So really, the sympathetic system. Like I use this example. I had an elite world-class wrestler. He did a French contrast back in the day with me, and his heart rate went to 180 as he was cranking through it. And then like 40 seconds later, he's like, "Hey man, when do I go again?" I'm like, when your heart rate gets to 110." And he's like, "Well, I'm at 67." I'm like, in 40 seconds, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? But I just kept watching it through the workout. I was like, yeah, he's just in world-class shape, right? But the point is you go to 180 beats per minute and then you can drop it that fast. That's a sign that you are in complete control of your sympathetic and parasympathetic system. So then your muscles relax faster. So then if your muscles can relax and you don't hold tension, guess what happens? Substrates get in and out. So you can do repeated sprintability. If your heart rate can predict repeated sprintability, in my opinion, because if your heart rate drops really fast, you're just getting organic substrates back in the muscles to refuel them to go again, right? So it's a rather complex problem, the relaxation, but there's a few things that you can fix it. Like, just getting off your set and working on your breathing, hitting a big belly breath, in my opinion, and teaching your athletes to go from high heart rate to low heart rate, just shifting back and forth, right? That's the magic with it. So, yes,
Which,
that
what size water bag do you end up using?
it's probably about 3 feet, or no, it's probably about 2.5 feet wide. And people have asked, and I waited. Ends up being about 20 pounds
Do you
when
know
my
what
ath-
company you use?
I would not know, man. I don't know. You can, if people don't want to pay for it, you could use a slosh pipe, right? You can just
Hmm.
take a pipe, fill it with water. I would probably with young kids not use that much. Like if you're
Hmm.
at home, your dad, hey, I'm gonna buy this water bag, have my kid run before we play. Perfect, perfect. Just don't do 20 pounds, right? Do 7 or 8. It'll still, yeah. I'm talking young kids. As the kids get older, it's probably fine. But I know, yeah, you just want to create something that's not normal, and the brain goes scared, like, this is not good. You know what I mean? This is not good. This is what I gotta.
Yeah, because they have up to 30 pound slosh bags.
Oh,
These
sure.
yeah, there's tons of them online right now.
Yeah. And the big thing is I wouldn't make sure they're not like if you fill them full, then the water doesn't move as well, right? The
Hmm.
goal is to create that chaos. Now again, Mike, here we go, guys. I don't want people thinking, oh, just standing on a Bosu ball do the same thing, because when I check that, it doesn't work. It actually shuts things off.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. If the muscle's in a bad pattern.
Hmm. That's
Now,
interesting.
I haven't done too much of it because I just was like, I don't do that a lot. But you know what? And I'm not saying it's not important for rehab and everything. You know what I'm saying? There's a time and a place. But just check it in that individual. That's all I'm saying. Well, how do I check it? We'll test a couple muscles, the same ones, and I would test the TFL and the glute med. I'm going to show people how to do it in my course. So think about this. You take my course for this ACL thing. You test the TFL, the glute med, right leg, test it on the left leg, and guess what? You'll know if that athlete's susceptible. Do a water bag run, bring him back. You're turned on. You're less susceptible now. Great. I, I help I help somebody, a coach, get their athletes in a good spot. Now, hey, you're out on the field. You see an athlete sprain an ankle. You better test those stability things, the glute med, the TFL, right? Because that whole thing could be shut off. And you see an athlete get hit in the shoulder or hurt their shoulder. You better not, if it's the left shoulder, you better test the right leg because it runs diagonal, right? That whole system runs diagonal. So if it's the left leg that's a problem, it'll be the right shoulder that's also a problem. If they're connected. If the right shoulder's driving the problem, it'll be the left leg shut off, not the right leg.
So go into that more. So what muscles of the left shoulder would you be, or is that more in the course?
Yeah, it's in the course, but I just test the delt. I just see where the delt's at, right? I'm not so sure. I'm also tested delt. I'm not so sure every time the the rotator cuff's involved, but it seems to be, but it's not 100%. And then, so what I'm saying is I get a negative test on the delt, and I'll get a weak test on the delt, and a strong test on the rotator cuff sometimes. And they work hand in hand sometimes, and sometimes they don't. Then let's go down the chain, Mike. So if it's a right shoulder, I check the right delt, weak. Um,
How do you check the delt?
I just have them hold their hand above like they're laying on a table, their hand above their head. They're holding it right in that position. And then I just put my hand underneath their wrist, and I'm like, ready, 1, 2, 3, hold. And they're holding it there. And then I just like lift up. It's a simple delt test to see. And people think I'm trying to test the muscle strength. I'm not. I'm testing really the reactiveness of how it turns on. You know what I mean? So people think muscle testing is about breaking them. It's not about breaking them. Um, I went to an old chiropractor once and he'd have me hold my hand up and he would just hit me with two fingers and he would just see that it's off. And I mean, that takes years of,
Yeah.
like, in my opinion, right? But you're going, he's just looking for the reactiveness of how the body can come back, right? Or how it turns on very quickly. Because if they don't turn on, then that little tap will move the arm farther than it's, because you can't rip on an old person when he tests old people. You know what I mean? If they're 80 years old, he's trying to, right? So that's all tested out. And then the upper, so it's the right shoulder. Then the next thing I'll go to, now I'm sure the serratus is involved because everyone lists that in, let's say, the spiral sling. I just don't test it. The upper transverse abdominis on the right side, same side delt. The upper TVA, when I say the upper, I'm talking from the belly button up to those ribs. Okay. And I've checked the right and left side. So yes, I've seen the upper TVA on the right side. If the right delt's bad, the upper TVA will be bad too in this sling system. The left side upper TVA is turned on. So you can have one side of your TVA on and the other side off. And then it goes over the belly button. I don't know if it doesn't go over, obviously it goes around. But the lower TVA, transverse abdominis, on the left side, that's where the cross happens at the belly button in the transverse abdominis sling, will be off. And that's the lower TVA is a simple test, right? You lay somebody on their back, you bend the knee. I'm covering this in the ACL course. And then they just internally rotate. You take the left leg, if you're testing the left TVA, bend it up so it's, close to 90, doesn't have to be at 90. And then you internally rotate their leg. They internally rotate, they hold it internally. As they're laying there, the leg internally rotates toward the midline. And then you grab their knee and you have them hold, you'll have to hold the opposite hip. And you have them hold that leg. And Mike, if the upper TVA and the delt's off, the lower TVA is not ever going to be on. And then the other thing that's not going to be on, as I already said in the podcast, is the TFL. That TFL on the left leg and the left lower transverse abdominis below the belly button. I've never had one on and the other one off. It's not possible. And look, it may be possible, especially if somebody just got a fresh injury to something. The TVA may stay on if you bruise the TFL, and the TFL is not right. But I'm just telling you, in my experiences, when I know that nothing's happened impact-wise in pain, that one's on, and because eventually it's not long where the one appears to shut off the other.
So in one of my acupuncture courses, there was an association between contralateral QL and levator scapula. And again, like that kind of falls into a sling thing.
Yes.
So where, and I've had, it's really interesting. I haven't seen it all the time, but if it's the right QL that's shortened, the right QL that's shortened, it'll be the left levator scapula. That'll be jacked up. Now, I personally haven't noticed fixing one influencing the other. Where it's like, I fix that QL and all of a sudden that shoulder drops. That doesn't seem to be the issue where it's that instant.
Yeah. You know what? There might be a more powerful sling in there, which would be the lateral sling, right? So what I've seen is it's the same, like that QL when it's off. I don't know if fixing the QL can fix the posterior side of the person on the same side. I know there's a sling that runs from that QL, like you're talking about, that crosses over and goes to the contralateral, levator scap. But when that QL's off, it's a stability problem, and the lat seems to be less. The lat seems to be not functioning optimally when I say that on the same side. So what I'm saying is there might be a more powerful sling that's interfering with what you're talking about. There is a sling that crosses over. I would butcher. I'm not sure which one it is. You can probably look it up with the Google search.
What are you basing your sling knowledge off of? Myers?
A little bit, yeah, but again, if you look at everybody's slings, the muscle grouping I just gave you from that anterior sling on the spiral sling, other muscles that they say are involved, they don't shut off. I'm saying, and they're not wrong. I'm just saying these are the functioning muscles that shut off in that order that I just gave you. Okay, so really you're going tibialis anterior, TFL, lower transverse abdominis, contralateral TVA upper, and the upper in the contralateral delt. So, and there's other things in the sling that run beside those, which I don't doubt the fascia is involved in. But what I'm saying is I haven't tested those muscles to find them off. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying this is a muscle grouping within the sling that's highly functional on stability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I was just going to ask, chicken or the egg. What I've sort of kind of noticed is if I have a power lifter and he's got a pec issue, it's not solely a pec issue, and it's not stemming from the pec originally. The original issues are the dysfunction in the rotator cuff, whether it's internal rotators, external rotators. We resolve. Now, I could work on the pec until the cows come home, and like, yeah, short term, but then it comes back. And when I work on the cuff, it's usually because the pec has to do excess stabilizing for the cuff. And when I work on specific rotator cuff muscles, whether it's lengthening, strengthening, releasing, whatever the hell it is, the pec issue that I address will end up sustaining the pain. They'll be more pain free. And you've said like you're looking so in my experience, it hasn't been chicken or egg. It's almost never in my experience, it's almost never the big muscles. It's almost always the smaller muscles that are causing the big muscles to have to do their job, to have to do the job of the smaller muscles. Does that make sense?
Well, Mike, in my opinion, in that scenario, that pec is now compensating, becoming more active to protect what you just said it. I'm going to maybe say it a little simpler. The pec has now learned that it's got to take over the job of other things to guard. I want to say guard, like, but you see that shoulder roll forward most likely in that case because of right. And you were going, oh, that's because something's dysfunctional. No, I don't think it's dysfunctional. I think the brain goes, I got to protect myself, so this is how I'm going to do it with my pec. And now the pec's under way more tension because they beat it up benching, right? So yes, there's 10 different ways to explain that. You're dead right every time.